request you to kindly do not scroll the mobile when the speaker is speaking. Thank you.
Social media ಬೇಗ ಸೆಟಪ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. ಇವ್ರದ್ದು ಅವ್ರು ಬೇರೆ ಲೈವ್ ಸ್ಟ್ರೀಮ್ ಅಷ್ಟೊತ್ತಿಗೆ ರೆಡಿ ಆದರೆ ಕೆಲವರು ಏನೋ ಫೈಟ್ಸ್ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ ಸಪ್ರೇಟ್ ಫೈಟ್ಸ್ ಬರೋ ಟೈಮ್ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ ನೀವು ರೆಡಿ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬರ್ತೀರಾ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಕೊಡೋಕ್ಕೆ ಆಚೆ
ಇಲ್ಲ ಅದಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಈಗ ಮತ್ತೆ ಶೆಡ್ಯೂಲ್ ಅದೇ ಶೆಡ್ಯೂಲ್
ಆಮೇಲೆ ತಗೊಳ್ತೀರಾ ಆಮೇಲೆ ಅವ್ರದ್ದೇನೋ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮ್ ಇದೆ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರಲ್ಲ ಈಗ ಫ್ರೀ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ನಾನು ಆಚೆ ಸರಿ ಆಮೇಲೆ ತಗೊಳ್ಳಿ ಇರ್ತಾರಂತ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ ನಾವು ಎಮ್ ಸಿ ಈಗ
Secretary, Bengaluru chapter, and I recognize the presence of CS Gopal Krishna Hegde sir, past Central Council member, CS Nagendra Rao sir, past President ICSI, and other senior members, and past Central Council members, past Management Committee, and other senior members. Indeed, it's my proud privilege to welcome each and everyone on behalf of ICSI Bengaluru chapter for today's interaction program with Dr. S. JAISHANKAR, Vishwa Bandhu Bharat. Today, the world is looking at Bharat as a Vishwa Bandhu. Bharat voice is heard on every major platform of the world. Wherever there is a crisis, the name of Bharat comes among the first countries to reach there. Today, strong Bharat stands with its people at every step, world looking at Bharat as Vishwa Bandhu. India has a long history of helping other countries. In the early days of independence, India provided aid to neighboring countries such as Nepal, Bhutan and Sri Lanka. In recent years, India has also expanded its aid program to include America. India is a foreign aid program is focused on three main areas. One, economic development, provides grants, loans and technical assistance to help developing countries improve their economies. And humanitarian assistance, provide food, medicine and other aid to countries that are affected by natural disaster and conflict. And capacity building. India provides training and education to help developing countries to build their own institutions and infrastructure. And as we know that India has supplied COVID-19 vaccine more than 98 countries as part of Maitri initiative. With this small brief, I take this opportunity to thank Dr. S. JAISHANKAR for accepting our request to interact with our members on the theme Vishwa Bandhu Bharat. Now I request CS Gopal Krishna Hegde sir to come forward and present sapling to Dr. S. JAISHANKar as a token of gratitude on behalf of Bengaluru chapter. Can we have a big round of applause? Thank you very much.
Thank you, CS Venkata Subbarao. In an Indian family setup, when we need to introduce somebody who is elder, we call upon elderly person in our own family. So now I would like to request CS Gopal Krishna Hegde ji to kindly come forward and introduce Dr. JAISHANKAR to us.
Dr. S. JAISHANKAR, Honorable Minister for External Affairs, Government of India, Mr. Dwaraknath, Central Council Member, Mr. Venkata Subbarao, Chairman, Bengaluru Chapter, Pradeep Kulkarni, Chairman, Southern India Indian Council, Mr. Vishwas Hegde, Secretary, distinguished members and guests. My proud privilege to introduce Dr. S. JAISHANKar to this august audience. St. Stephen's College at University of Delhi has Masters in Political Science, MPhil and PhD in International Relations from Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi. Dr. JAISHANKar was Foreign Secretary from 2015 to 18, Ambassador to United States 2013 to 15, China 2009 to 2013. Charitanam to Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Whole world is one family. In that world, Vishwa, Bharat is the Bandhu. As Krishna declared in Bhagavad Gita, Buddhi Buddhimatam Asmi, I am the intellect of the intelligent. There, the guiding spirit there. Kushalatnam Pramitoyam, never deviate from the welfare of the greater good over individual and intents. Never deviate from the progress and development. Satyam Vada Dharmam Chara. Thank you.
Thank you, CS Gopal Krishna Hegde sir. Now I would like to call upon CS Dwaraknath C, Central Council Member.
UAE, USA, UK, Singapore, Australia and Canada. The ICSI has on its register over 72,000 codes. The ICSI upholds a glorious path of company secretaries in the world to issue secretary standards under section 118 subsection 10 of the Companies Act 2013 approved by the central government. The Malaysian Association of Company Secretaries has adopted, conducts company secretary examinations twice a year in the June and December at the centers spread all over India at an overseas center at Dubai. Arranges for practical training of executive professional program qualified students with companies, practicing company secretaries, etc. empaneled with the institute for the purpose. Enrolls qualified persons as associates, fellow members of the institute, and issues certificate of practice to members taking up practice. ICSI academic collaboration with universities, academic institutions for learning and development of students, professional and academy. ICSI International Area Center at Noida in 2024. On the social front, the ICSI has taken initiative Shahid Ki Beti Fund to support education of martyrs' daughters. Fee waiver for activists, whereas currently we have around 72,000 company secretaries. So there is a huge demand that is going to be there for the company secretaries to support the corporate sector in the days to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, C.S. Dwarkanathji. So before we move on to Dr. JAISHANKAR, she to direct address the gathering.
Namaskar. Distinguished leadership of ICSI on the DIS, dear friends. I'm very happy to and have this opportunity to present my views on Vishwabandhu Bharat and projects about IT, about bullet trains. I mean, in hundreds of ways today, we are finding even tourists. After all, the more you relate to the world, more tourism there will be, and there are benefits even from that. So that is really our starting point. Now, at the same time, the world also has its concerns, it has its challenges. We can have a conflict somewhere in the world which will impact us, because the conflict can impact us if one of us, if due to that, if oil prices rise or if food prices rise or global inflation rises, it impacts us. So foreign policy today matters to every one of us. It is not something which somebody in Ministry of Foreign External Affairs does. Foreign policy in many ways has an increasingly direct impact on our lives. But these are some of the, I would say, more distant challenges which I am saying. Sometimes it can impact us very much. Terrorism is an issue, that when you have terrorism from across the border, you do not know which city, where it will strike, who will be involved, what will be the casualty, or pressures that we face sometimes on our borders. So in different, the world therefore is actually for us a very complex mix of opportunities, of partnerships, but of challenges and concerns. A good foreign out, how do you maximize it? How do you maximize it to do? And this, in many ways, is the thrust of the Sankalp Patra that we have presented to the people for the coming weeks, is what we want the country to be regarded with respect and with friendship, where we also actually contribute in different ways. Now, what we have tried to do when we have presented the Sankalp Patra is actually to give some specific to flesh this out, to say, okay, what does being a Vishwabandhu actually mean? And I briefly summarize for the purposes of the discussion that will follow. I would say one important part of it is actually there are roughly about 200 countries in the world, 193 members of UN, but some countries are not members of UN. Out of these 200 countries in the world, maybe about 125, 130 were actually colonized at some point. And today these countries are seen as the global south. These they may be different, but they share many common interests. And today, because it's the biggest, the most populous, the most advanced economy among them, the one with the greatest political, a first responder. Now, it's easy to say you will be a first responder, but like anything in life, unless there are preparations, unless there are SOPs which are laid out, you cannot respond. I will give you an example. Last year, many of you would remember there was a civil war in Sudan, which is still going on. About roughly 4,000 to 5,000 Indians were stranded out there. Most of them had gone to work out there. Within 24 hours, we actually had both the Air Force and the Navy very close to Sudan, ready to go in to get our people. We were able to move our own people from the Foreign Ministry and others up there. Now, unless you have already planned and prepared for this, you cannot call up the Air Force and say, please send a plane. There should be already a drill which is laid out. Every time, in fact, anything has to be wished for. Now, in terms of our own priorities, obviously, like any country, the neighborhood comes first. And, with neighbors, again, there are, many opportunities, but there will also be issues with neighbors. It comes for every country with every neighborhood. So today, how to develop a much more, I would say, politics-proof relationship with our neighbors. That you can have ups and downs of politics, but still the relationship between the countries and the peoples remains strong. How do you then extend this to the zone beyond? Particularly, we are an oceanic country. We have a policy called Sagar, which looks at all the issues we are looking at. Vishwabandhu is a nation which is much more sought as a partner, but which is much more willing to be a partner. And one of the big enterprises that we are initiating, because I want to give more time for our discussion. I think there are two interesting aspects which we will like to develop in the coming years, and certainly all of that is there. But somewhere, all of that is there. But somewhere, there is something unique about us. We are a society of thousands of years of history, culture, tradition, heritage. We are one of the few old civilizations who are today not just there, but actually prospering and, in a sense, reviving as a nation state. There are very few. If you look at the history of the world, many of the old civilizations either disappeared or they broke up into smaller bits, or they lost their civilizational sense, or something happened to them. There are very few of us who today can say that, yes, I go back, say, 5,000 years. Now, with that 5,000 years, we need to have that self-awareness of what we are, where we came from, what we believe in. Because these are actually traits which will guide us in the journey forward. When people often bring up issues and problems, when you have that kind of long view, a long view of the past, you can also have a long view of the future. You have the understanding, the maturity to deal with a lot of challenges. That when we see conflict, for example, when we counsel people, saying, look, you can't settle this on this solution will not come from the battlefield. This is not escapism. It is actually the accumulated experience of a society, which has seen that often some kind of understanding through dialogue and diplomacy is much better than trying to get a one-sided settlement through recourse to violence. So, how do we today project our culture and civilization on the global stage? Because the world is also taking much more interest in this. 10 years ago, economically in the hierarchy, we were number 11. Okay, we were not just number 11. There were actually genuine question marks about us. We were one of what were called the fragile 5 economies of the world. Today, in that gap of that 10 years, from the fragile 5 we have become top 5. From number 11 we have become top 5. And we have, in this era that we are entering, this is an era increasingly going to be of AI, of chips, of electric mobility, of drones, of space. If I come back to you 2 years from now, 4 years from now, I guarantee you we'll be talking about something very different. But it is an era where more and more, actually the value of human, it's a paradox, that the era of artificial intelligence will actually require a lot of natural intelligence to take artificial intelligence forward. Think about it. And, so I would say today, India's real strength, which is talent, which is skill. You sir spoke about how many more company secretaries would be needed. But I can tell you, take any profession in the world today. Look at global demographic trends. How is global demographics faring? You will discover a very interesting pattern. Where there is demand, there is a big demographic challenge. This is an opportunity for us. So how do we today bring what has been actually our biggest strength into play, not only as in the country, which we should do, but at an international level? And if we are preparing for what I see as a global workplace, I see, in the next 10 years, that actually the global economy will change remarkably. Not just because of technology, but also because of demographics. That there will be much more mobility, that there will be, we are trying at one level because we are, particularly after Prime Minister Modi came, we are trying to revive manufacturing in this country because we feel that it was allowed to go down very dangerously the preceding decades. So all of you are familiar about Make in India. Make in India, make for the world. I want to tell you that what awaits you is work in India, work for the world. This is actually the future for which we need to prepare. And if we are to work in India, work for the world, we have to be trusted. To be trusted, the Vishwabandhu image is actually what is going to be very, very crucial. So I want to present you this sense today that at home all of you are conversant with the transformations of the last 10 years. I think Prime Minister has been very honest about it. As he says, there is a lot that he feels he hasn't done yet. He's done his best, but there is still so much to do. And definitely, each one of us, somewhere, in our homes, on our streets, in our towns, moving somewhere else. In some form or the other, we are witnessing the change and the progress of the last 10 years. It is happening, across society. This is not a change which only, the prosperous people are feeling. One of the big changes to my mind is actually the fact that we have managed in the last 10 years to lift 250 million out of poverty, and through various schemes actually move the entire society up as we go along. But as someone who is talking about India and the world, today this brand of Vishwabandhu Bharat, this sentiment, this perception about us, this is actually the goal that we will be striving for in the years to come. And as I said, we have highlighted different elements of what constitutes a Vishwabandhu. And we are very confident that, the people of India, taking into account the record of performance, looking at what we believe is actually a deep-rooted national desire to move in the next 25 years towards a Viksit Bharat. That as we move down that path, while we do all the right things at home, we also prepare for a bigger contribution, a bigger presence, a bigger influence, but also a deeper relationship with the world. So thank you again for listening to my thoughts.
Thank you very much, sir, for setting a tone for this particular interactive session. It was indeed a keynote address to us on Vishwabandhu Bharat. I would like to request C.S. Pradeep Kulkarni, Chairman SIRC, to kindly lead the interactive session now onwards.
Good morning, everyone. DR.S. JAISHANKAR sir, I welcome you once again on behalf of our entire fraternity sitting here and on the first and second floor. And thank you for gracing our chapter with your esteemed presence. At the outset, I would like to thank you on behalf of all the Bengalurians for getting us the US consulate to the Bengaluru. I also would like to congratulate you for authoring the book Why Bharat Matters. It was recently released January 2024. Congratulations to you, sir. We have prepared a couple of questions which I would be posing to you, and there are audience also wish to ask some questions, sir. Depending on the time permits, we will take a couple of questions. To start with, governments explore bilateral and multilateral economic relations based on how they affect global alliances, globalization, and economic health of nations. Government comes out with methods to develop, encourage, and maintain these relations among diverse nations and cultures. So in this context, how do you perceive India's special responsibility in this changing world scenario? Could be geopolitical, environmental, or any other aspect, sir?
It's an interesting question. Because in a way we come back to Vishwabandhu. And once a friend of mine, not Indian, told me that when they look at India Indians, especially interacting with the rest of the world, we have an ability to get along with people. He put it differently. He said you generate very few antibodies. But the fact is, actually, if you look at us today, people sometimes ask us, you are in the Quad with America, Australia and Japan. Then you are in the BRICS with Russia and China and Brazil and South Africa. Then you are in this world, there's a democracy kind of, I'd say, conference or a conference on democracy. Then you are with the Global South. So how do you actually do this? And the reality is, actually, we do it even in our own lives. We have this ability to, in a good way, of handling multiple roles and identities and so on. In the case of diplomacy, obviously it requires a degree of strategizing and thinking. But when I said that in a way Vishwa Bandhu is Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas at a global level, how we work in the world is with every potential or actual partner, you figure out what is the touch point, what is it which you and they actually have something in common, and then try to build upon that, which means you actually search for common points. Now, all countries don't do that. Many countries actually are, in fact, first focus on where is it you differ. What makes you different from me? The moment I start what makes you different from me, I actually start going on a negative path. When I start, you and I may disagree on 200 things, but if there are 3 things which we agree on, you start building on those things. So we believe today that, in going ahead in the world, it is very important to have as many partners, as many groupings, as many issues on which we can find common ground. They can range, they can be strategic like what? They can be energy driven like the International Solar Alliance. They can be even something like we have this initiative that there are a few countries around the world who are big cats, and can we actually exchange best practices on how to protect and nurture and grow big cats of various kinds. So it's a kind of a mindset which you bring to bear. Now this is very important because this job ideally, in an ideal world, should have worked when the UN worked. Ideally everybody should have come under one tent, 200 countries, 193 countries, whatever, sit down and discuss all the problems in the UN. But the reality is the UN is working less and less. And when the top line solution doesn't work, I think each country, certainly a country like India, has to find other solutions. And part of what we are doing is really something. We of course remain hopeful that through persistence and pressure, we will be able to reform the UN. But definitely these are, at the minimum, there are interim solutions so that our interests continue progressing.
Thank you very much. Going on to the next question. Sir, transnational firms and government's initiatives addresses how better corporate governance policies can support corporate access to capital, value creation and economic growth. This work is carried out in close cooperation with policymakers, business community, investors, academicians and other key stakeholders. Keeping special attention in the context of emerging markets, how do you perceive the role of company secretaries as governance and compliance professional in globalization of corporate governance?
I wasn't being facetious when I said I welcome the thought that we actually have to triple the number of company secretaries we have for a very simple reason. Just think just step back and think for a moment what's going to happen to the Indian economy. Today, we are at about 3.7 trillion. We are looking maybe in the next few years crossing the 5 trillion. By 2047, there are studies which, database studies which show that the Viksit Bharat, our goal of 2047, we would be 30 trillion. Goldman Sachs has predicted that by 2075, we will actually be the second largest economy in the world at 52.5. Now, I'm giving you that graph. Now, when you look at that graph, tell me how many companies are producing it. Tell me how many engineers you produce. Tell me how many, doctors, lawyers, chartered accountants. Tell me how many policemen, customs people you will. So, we are today, poised for something very, very big. It's important we are ambitious. It's important we are aware. And not just we are aware, as I explained to you, if you are a first responder, we have today a disaster response force. We have SOPs. I need one telephone call to tell my ministry, set up a control room. Within 2 hours, that control room is up and ready. Now, that is where I have prepared one outfit for one task. Now, think of preparing an entire nation for a very, very complex task. So, and it's not just we are going to do. Think of how global we are going to be. If you think today of how many Indian companies are registered in Singapore, believe me, it's actually a trade. You're going to, this kind of growth that we're going to have, and this kind of international involvement and presence that we're going to have. And, to me, part of, frankly, what I see as something so unique about Prime Minister Modi, I have never heard any other Indian leader think so big, really, and not just think big, think so practical. That he has the big goal, but he also has a kind of a ground sense on what are the 1, 2, 3 steps you need to keep going down there. So I would say today the time has come for us to prepare really for a much more globalized India. Many more, we're going to see actually a proliferation of our own corporate sector. I also expect, by the way, I expect to see what we are already the largest recipients of FDIs in the world. But I can tell you again, this figure is nothing compared to what is going to await us. Because if you look at two very important concerns in the world today, one of them is how to build a global supply chain, which is not necessarily going through China. So the rest of the world is looking for alternatives and additions. So you are going to get much more foreign collaborations coming in. Secondly, the entire digital sector, because it is based on trusted vendors and rules and legal confidence. You're going to get a lot of digital businesses coming to you. So I actually predict that in the course of this decade, the entire economic scene and the corporate scene is going to undergo a sea change. And I think you guys, especially the younger people, you actually are looking at a very, very promising picture on the horizon.
Sir gave us the insight that all the company secretaries have a long way to go, and also at the same time we have a lot of responsibilities to shoulder to uplift our Bharat from the existing level to the next level. Thank you very much, sir, for that inspiring words. Moving on to the next question. Recently, it has been observed that the issue of environmental protection is becoming an increasingly important element in present and future relations that has potential for extreme serious conflict between the firms and governments. Hence, we see that governments across the globe are increasingly facing regulatory competitions from obviously the local governments and also from transnational organizations as well. Similarly, do you see any other conflict and challenging issues coming up in various other nations in the way to economic growth and progress?
I'm not comfortable, honestly, with the manner in which you put it. I'll tell you why. Because it suggests somewhere that governments, either bottom up, local governments are forcing them to do the right thing, or you need forces from outside to force you to do the right thing. I think a very intrinsic part of good governance is actually for the government itself to anticipate and predict and prepare for certainly in the environmental field. And if you look today, it's very telling. If you look at I look at the last 10 years, look at the propagation of solar energy in this country. 10 years ago, it was considered like very esoteric and, by the way, very expensive. Look at something like what started as a Namami Gange program, clean up Ganga, but which has then spread in different forms to other places. So, in fact, it is, cannot be that the government and the mainstream continues to dirty and it's other people's job to tell them to keep it. It is actually the government's responsibility to lead the way and enthuse people and promote awareness in people. So, part of what, in fact, Modi ji is trying to do, if you connect the dots sometimes, when you say Swachh Bharat, when you say smart cities, when you say river cleanup, we had a program called Amrit Sarovar, where water is going waste in this country and then we all have a water shortage. How do you actually do water harvesting, water storage? When we look even at something like millets, that how do you eat grain which is less consuming of water, which by the way happens also to be more nutritious. So the whole environmental issue, the environmental should be intrinsic to us as individuals, as well as to the country and to the government. The moment you externalize it, you say there's somebody out there who, by the way, they do the environment. They are concerned about the environment, which suggests you are not. So we need to build this into our DNA almost as part. So it's very interesting, when you look at the initiatives which have come out of India, they're all very practical initiatives. One of them is this, what PM calls Mission Life, which is every day in our daily lives, are there simple things we can do which actually makes a difference. One of the initiative proposals we have offered in the Sankalp is the idea, it's called Surya Ghar. The idea is rooftop solar. If every house has a rooftop solar, think of the aggregate you're going to get. It could actually be a game changer. So, I understand the sentiment, but I would say there's a lot of responsibility that everybody, especially the government, needs to take, and that's actually exactly what the Modi government is doing.
Thank you very much. The message is environmental protection is each and every citizen of India to protect our environment and move on. With your permission, can we take some questions from audience?
Respected sir, salutations to you on behalf of ICSI. We are thankful to the Almighty, the God, for giving such a wonderful minister to our country. And we are honored to that. I have two questions here with your kind permission. One is the current scenario between Iran and Israel is so stressful. and how do you think this would impact our nation? Second, as we all know, you are the most powerful minister holding the most challenging portfolio. My question here is, how do you manage to stay so calm, motivated, and with a smile all the time? Thank you, sir.
Well, I think the first question, seriously, the Iran-Israel issue is a cause for concern. It's a cause for concern because, one, it is not that far away from us. Number two, it's a very vital region of the world. Much of our energy comes from that region. A very large part, almost half our trade goes through that region. There are roughly almost a crore, 90 lakh Indians who live in that region. So, if anything untoward happens in that larger region, it will have very, very serious consequences. So, when we saw this, before leaving, in fact, Prime Minister asked me to speak to both these countries. I called up my counterparts, and we certainly counsel restraint. And then there are, of course, some immediate issues. In this case, also we had a ship which has been detained in Iran. There are 17 Indian crew members there. That is a cause of concern. We can't get their release back. But I point to, from this one example, a larger issue. The larger issue is, today there are roughly 18 million Indians who live and work outside India. This number will grow. There are, by the way, another 16 million Indians who are not our citizens, who are people of Indian origin. So even if I look at it narrowly in terms of legal responsibilities, I'm still responsible for 17, 18 million people who at any given time are outside. Now, the more the global workplace expands, this responsibility will grow, which means that, what you read about, that, we send Operation Ganga, we get somebody from Ukraine, Kaveri, we get somebody from Sudan, where we go and what we do. These capacities and this ability and this preparedness has to be. The second is, the world will be different. We have to proceed on the assumption. Right now, we are having a war in Ukraine. We are having fighting in Gaza. You mentioned the Israel-Iran thing. Things in the Indo-Pacific are difficult. We have ourselves tension on the border with China. So, we are also looking at a very stormy outlook in the world. So, in a stormy outlook in the world, we have to have today that ability to be confident, to take the right calls, to have the experience, to sometimes have the courage. We have to protect and prosper at home, but also manage the risks outside the country, and that too is very much therefore a decision. When we say, okay, today we have to decide what does Indian democracy deliver. But it's important for the Indian public to also say, okay, what kind of leadership do I need to navigate through this very difficult course ahead. Your second question was, I remember what it was. So your second question was, how do I manage my life? Well, because we've been doing something for some time, that helps. I have the advantage of having low blood pressure. And at the end of it all, I have a very understanding wife. Combination of a good home environment, and to be very honest, I keep myself active. I think that also. But when you actually have done, it's something in any profession. If you have strong professional skills, you know the let us say you know the market, you know the players, you know your business well. Very honestly, you enjoy your work. You know, when you enjoy your work, you don't get tension.
Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yes.
I have had the privilege of listening to you yesterday evening, also last evening. So I am picking that a very profound statement which you made yesterday, that if we do not know where we are from, then you do not know where you are going. I think you reiterated that today about self-awareness. Yeah, you spoke about the self-awareness and about our civilization. I was quite curious to know, so many day in and day out you are handling the challenging situations and situations of dilemma. So going beyond history, do you draw any inspiration or guidance from any of our ancient texts, any instances which has guided you?
You know, not always consciously, but what happens is, I think many of us, we all grow up in an environment where in our own environment we pick up so many things. I give you two examples because these are things you can actually in a way follow on. When I was writing my first book, actually it was before I was writing, I had retired from the foreign service. I was at that time working with the Tata Group. And one of the habits of which I had grown up with even as a child was actually discussing Mahabharata at home. My parents, father particularly encouraged us to do. So I used to often use it, when we speak about diplomacy, conflict, competition, I would use examples. So I had a very senior colleague of mine who told me, I keep hearing you do this. Why don't you do one thing? You please come. In fact, I was invited to, there's a Sai Foundation in New Delhi, saying, why don't you use the Mahabharata as a template today to describe what is happening in the world? So I did. Then I happened after a few days to go and visit my predecessor, Sushma ji. I mentioned to her, I said, I was encouraged to do this. I'll be very interested, she was keen to actually see what I had, read what I had said. So I gave her what I had said. And she then told me, you should be writing about it. When I wrote my first book, I can tell you in India, the strongest response that I got from the public was actually that one chapter on the Mahabharata, where I took the global situation and drew analogies to Mahabharata. Now fast forward 4 years. I was at the Marathi translation edition release of my first book. And somebody stood up and said, have you ever looked at the Ramayana in a similar way? I had looked at the Ramayana, but not with that in mind. So this person, who had by the way herself written multiple books, including on Ramayana and Ramayana, once she put that thought in my head, what we all already knew, to marshal the same thing differently. So when I started writing this book, I told myself, okay, for every chapter, every issue, every situation that I take up, there are about 10 of them, let me find something similar in the Ramayana, which will make sense. Now, what happens is, where does history come? If I want to convey a very complex message to you, I can take half an hour to explain it, or I can give you one historical situation, 2 sentences, and you will get it. So, if I say, okay, somebody, let us say, keeps bothering me, keeps attacking me, I'm very, very forbearing. Then if you tell them, no, it's like Krishna Bhagwan and Shishupal. They know exactly what you mean. That now enough is enough. No, Puri and Barakot are coming. So I think what we need to do, actually when I said yesterday that we need to be self-aware, I think it's important, and I say this particularly to the younger people who are at the farther end of the room. You know, to know our own history, our own, and by the way, it doesn't have to be even epics. You know, I mean, if you take our own historical rulers, you know, the smart strategists don't need to be white and European. You know, a Shivaji, a Ranjit Singh, a Krishna Deva Raya, all these people are also examples to us. Maybe we should be studying them, you know, much more, understanding their complexities and sort of imbibing from them.
We'll take one last question from any company secretary. Anyone, one last.
Yeah, she's.
I'm not a company secretary, but if I may ask the question.
Let's give the company secretary.
So may I?
Somebody else. There. Nagraj. There. Next to Tripathi.
It's an honor, sir. It's an honor to have you with us. My question is, in context of Vishwabandhu, how do we look at our troubled neighbors like Afghanistan, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, and what is the plan of the government in terms of in your next and subsequent terms, and how do we plan to take them in?
Thank you for that vote of confidence. please keep it up till I think April 26th. No, why don't I do one thing? I saw two raised hands. I think you wanted to ask something and you wanted to ask something. So let me take those two and I'll do them one.
Sir, namaste. You are a bureaucrat turned politician. I aspire to be one too. So between bureaucracy and politics, which one would you prefer and why?
So my name is Prerna and thank you for the opportunity. Over the recent years, we've been working towards reducing our reliance on the dollar and making our own currency international. Just I want to know how you see this becoming a reality.
Okay, one last. Behind you. Yeah.
See, further to the question he has asked, we want to be a Vishwabandhu. To be a Vishwabandhu, we should not be a part of conflict, or we should not be a center of conflict. So in such a situation, we are having a troubling neighbors. Of course, we don't have the chance to change the neighbors. So with that context, how are we keeping that relation without compromising the interest of the nation and putting our point?
Okay, give that last gentleman behind and I'll really end with this.
Thank you for selecting me, sir. See, I'm a chartered accountant, Harish. My question is, now recently you see 1/4 of our population, they are ranking our democracy very low on the press freedom and all. See, after Modi ji, ease of doing, we have come to 150 plus 250 plus now.
So, question.
My question is, why can't India start ranking democracies, all the countries in the world, making some parameters?
Sure. Okay. So, the first question, Afghanistan, Myanmar. Look, both, they are two different situations. Both have, right now, are in a very conflict, in Afghanistan, Taliban is more or less in control. In Myanmar, there is much more, the very complex conflict which is going on. But at the end of the day, what happens? One difference between us and you can say in a way Western powers or what Soviet Union used to do, we don't go out to other countries, send the military, try to solve their problems and say you should now be like the way I would like you to be. That's never been our history, and that's not the way we intend really to expand our influence or rise the world. I think we have sometimes to accept realities and work with that reality to the best possible. In the case of Afghanistan, I can tell you on the ground level, there is an enormous goodwill for us. Actually, we asked the average Afghan person, they are very, very positive things. Our record there has been very good. We have never been part of any of the violence there over the last 40 years. That's not the case with most neighbors, and certainly not the case with Bengaluru. So I think we need to, sometimes you have a situation where the regime may be a bit of an obstacle. Then you actually work around it and say, okay, how do I build something with the people, because I have to go through a certain cycle. Not just Afghanistan, it can happen with some of the other neighbors. I mean, sometimes people ask me, this so-and-so country has has expressed something against you. My answer would be here to show the patience of Sri Krishna and wait for your time. Okay. You don't have to react to everything all the time, Again, I spoke about a long view. When you have the kind of history and maturity we have, we are not a trigger-happy country. We are a very, very, we reflect 100 times before we do things. But sometimes you have to do things, because I will then move to this question. When you said you have to avoid conflict, yes, I agree with you. But avoiding conflict doesn't mean turning the other side. If there is, let us say, I'll give you two examples. If there is cross-border terrorism, continuously saying, well, he's a bad guy, that's the way he does it. At some stage, the people doing cross-border terrorism must feel the pain. There must be a cost. If you keep, there is a lesson even in Mahabharata. Balarama decided to take a gap year when the fighting was going on. So he stayed after the fight. So some fights you cannot tackle. Some fights, particularly if there is a fight which involves our core interests. If today, let us say, some country brings a big force to our borders, I will send my force up there to contest it, which is exactly what I am doing on the China border. So yes, as a general rule, we would like to get along with everybody. I am very much for it, even with these two neighbors. But if I am challenged, if they harm me or threaten to harm me or pressurize me, I think escapism and idealism, because that idealism we saw during Nehru's time. He kept thinking nothing would happen with China. When it happened, we were not prepared. We can't afford that again. I mean, one Nehru and we paid 38,000 kilometers of lost territory in the northern areas. So we need to be prepared. So there has to be, like everything, there is a balance out there. Do you prefer politics or bureaucracy? I mean, listen, when you are in politics, it's clear you prefer politics. It's not like when I was in bureaucracy, they said, will you go into politics, or was it when I don't have a chance of going. I think there are different phases of your life. For me, it's not been, it was moving one, and by the way, I had a very, very happy year in the corporate sector. So let me also speak up for the corporates of India. They're also. So I've been, in a way, fortunate enough that I had a long stint in bureaucracy, a brief while in the corporate sector, now political responsibility, and very honestly, I've liked all of them, I've enjoyed all of them, and as I said, when you do things you like, it's easy. On the currency issue, it's actually becoming a reality because it's also a compulsion. The fact is today, a very large number of our trading partners have shortages of hard currency. I think it's also increasingly becoming a problem in our immediate neighborhood. So what we are trying to do today is to find either rupee settlements or mutual currency settlements I think in many ways that would be like something which will grow with time. As a matter of policy, we would like to expand. Why do I need a third currency if I can avoid a third currency? I'm just actually increasing my business costs by using a third currency. So I can see with the rise of India, many more direct local or Indian currency settlement. I had one last question from you, which was on democracy. Democracy. Thank you. Well, actually, frankly speaking, I think that will happen. My sense is a lot of people, we know these rankings in many, some rankings are genuine. I'm not questioning all rankings in all fields. But in many cases, the rankings themselves are an agenda. Because when you look at the rankings and you look at the people involved in the ranking, you will find finally all roads lead back to 20, 30, 50 people. The same 50 people in every institution will influence what is the perception of India. So again, there are many ways of dealing with it. One is to shrug your shoulders and say it doesn't matter. One is to argue, contest, push back. We do that sometimes. One is what you are suggesting, and what you are suggesting, you mentioned democracy kind of issues. I think in other areas too, that there are institutions and serious people today in the country who are contemplating exactly what you are saying, which is it's time for us to actually put out our opinions. If they can say what they want, not minding whether we are offended or not, I think time has come for us also to say what we want, whether other people are offended or not.
Especially revolving around Vishwabandhu Bharat. Thank you very much. Your perspective on all the questions are very, very invaluable for all of us. Thank you once again on behalf of all the company secretaries gathered here.
A big round of applause for our Foreign Minister. Sir, we are really proud that you are our Foreign Minister, and it is in our blood that, like it is in our culture to felicitate you. I request the Management Committee of Bengaluru Chapter to kindly come forward and felicitate our Finance Minister. External Minister.
Hello. Sir, ನೀವು ಈ ಕಡೆ ಕೊಡಿ. ಬನ್ನಿ ಶಾರದಾ ಬನ್ನಿ, ನೀವು ಬರಬೇಕು.
Good afternoon. Jalru Namaskara. Dr. S. JAISHANKAR, Honorable Minister of External Affairs. Before we started the program, there were a couple of friends who were asking, how does the Ministry of External Affairs help the institute? Friends, the vision of our institute is to be a global leader in promoting good corporate governance. Let me take this opportunity in thanking on behalf of the institute, on behalf of all the 72,300 members, as well as all the members, students, in helping and shaping to have our global footprints across the globe. As of now, we have 6 overseas chapters of the institute in US, UK, Singapore, Australia, UAE, and wherever we have met the High Commissioner's office, I would like to tell you that wherever the Ministry of External Affairs and more so where the High Commissioner's office were involved, it was the same hug what all the present countries in the world in G20 are giving to the Prime Minister. The same kind of confidence, the same kind of zeal, enthusiasm, those are being shown by the Ministry of External Affairs officer. So we thought it fit that would be a special appreciation for all those members who are there of the Ministry of External Affairs, who are sitting across the globe, who are helping us, whether it is for us. They organize a program for the chamber of the various corporate sectors across the globe to ensure in India. I am sure that, friends, we all know that we are just 2 minutes. We all know that what is the situation which had happened and is happening in Russia, Ukraine. We all know what has happened in Israel, Gaza, and we also know what is happening in the Israel-Iran situations. I would only like to say, I am reminded of an Hindi poem where it says, "वह पथ क्या पति कुशलता था, जब पथ में बिखरे शूल न हो, नाविक की धैर्य कुशलता क्या, जब धाराएं प्रतिकूल न हो, नाविक तो नाविक है तब तक, जब तक तूफानों में बढ़ता जाता, शांत सरोवर में कहा, किसको नाव में होना आता." It means where you are in the true feature of a person who is navigating the ship is only determined in troubled waters. And I am sure that the steps taken by our Honorable Minister of External Affairs have given a new hope. His name itself indicates wherever there is a Shankar, there is Jai. So, thank you very much. Thank you once again for kindly rise for the national anthem, please.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता, पंजाब सिंधु गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा, विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा, तव शुभ नामे जागे, तव शुभ आशीष मांगे, गाहे तव जय गाथा, जन गण मंगल दायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता, जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे जय।
Thank you everyone for attending this interactive session on behalf of Bangalore chapter of ICSI. Thank you one and all. The high tea is arranged. Kindly have the high tea on behalf of Bangalore chapter of ICSI, please. Within 10 minutes, we are going to assemble for the study circle meeting. Thank you. For information all, high tea is arranged in the basement.
Acting ಕೊಡ್ಲಾ ಇಲ್ಲ ಕ್ಯಾಮ್ರಾ ಪ್ಯಾಕ್ ಮಾಡಲ್ಲ ಇದನ್ನು ಪ್ಯಾಕ್ ಮಾಡಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದೆ ಆಡಿಯೋ